Well, this is part 3 in the conversation with TJ West on his podcast show called My Blurred Opinion. Let's unpack some of the issues surrounding homelessness. But in this episode, we're going right into the truth of how the COVID virus has impacted them as a community. This is an unprecedented time in history because of how it complicates the homeless experience. Then we dive into even more of the issues about the military vets and the difference between visible and invisible disabilities. There's a lot of things our soldiers witness just in the pursuit of what they call performing their duties that most of us back home never get to hear about. And then we have a little surprise ending for you that was magic moment caught in the spirit as it happened, as TJ sends out a heartfelt message to his own father as we observe this holiday in 2021.
Neighborhood after neighborhood right now have no choice but to see these homeless people out there as one of their own. Yeah. We're getting to the point where it's no longer us and them. We're getting to the point finally where we are starting to realize they're just normal people. They all have families. They all came from families. We tend to say, there's that homeless guy. You know, it's kind of like, where did he come from? You know, well, he's one of us. He's in our neighborhood. And sometimes a sack lunch ain't enough. A pair of shoes, a backpack, that's not enough for these people. They need to know that we're accepting them as if they're still a part of our communities. We just haven't figured out how to fix it yet. That's what I'm seeing, how COVID has been changing how we actually interact with the homeless. And not only that, but people with disabilities, man. I mean, things were shut down, dude. You couldn't go get a haircut. You couldn't get your driver's license. You couldn't go to the freaking library, for crying out loud. I cannot imagine somebody that has a real physical disability and they need something, you know. I know people that need, you know, some kind of back brace or some kind of special neck brace. They couldn't get an appointment to go get it, so they're laying in bed without it.
Right.
That's what COVID did to us.
Right, but that's
you're
why
right, though.
What you're doing is noble, because you said, you know, you're writing a book and you're trying to be an advocate for people that are homeless because you were one. You know what it's like to be them.
Yes.
And, you know, it's the same thing, you know, like you said with me, like I'm doing the same thing with people with disabilities. They know what it's like to be them. That's another reason why they trust me so much when they come on here, because a lot of them are afraid to share their story and they don't want to say it because it's like, well, no one's going to accept me. But it's like they come on here and they know I will accept them because I am like them and I can't turn my back on them. And that's what you're doing with them. Like you can't turn your back on them because you are them and they're suffering and you're not anymore. And you got to be grateful for what you do have. Like you have a wife. You found someone who actually accepts you and loves you.
I'm remarried now. My wife is so wonderful because we sort of met each other and we were both struggling with some really hard issues. And what we found out was these are things that society says you're not supposed to talk about. You're not supposed to deal with. Like you said, it's taboo. And so now I have a brick house instead of a tent. I got 3 acres of land. I'm not hiding out behind a business building or sleeping under the trees or the bushes. I got 3 acres of land, and it kind of sucks because there's a lot to mow. I got to mow grass now, you know. So the other side is when I started offering forgiveness, I started realizing genuine forgiveness is not necessarily for them. It's for you. It's that invisible disability, that invisible wound, that scar that's on the inside. It's always going to be tender to the touch. But when you learn to just actually start accepting and forgiving, not forgive and forget, not run through the valley picking flowers and loving each other. It's just so that you can get that damn poison out of your veins, man. That's what worked for me.
Right.
And I'm a semi-truck driver. I go all over the United States. I'm serious. I go everywhere, and I see homeless people out there. And, you know, the next step is, what do we do for them? Well, now, because of COVID, I'm kind of making the statement that the numbers you're hearing in homeless are the real numbers of people they're seeing out there. But when we start seeing the homeless people as authentic people that are hurting, they're not just lazy that don't want to get a job. They're sleeping in a tent for a reason. And I'm asking people to have a little bit more compassion for them, especially any holiday. But Easter's the other big one because we see everybody in their Sunday school clothes, and everybody looks like the Leave It to Beaver family or something. But these people that are in homeless, their wounds are real, and the pain that they have, they'll burst out crying and they don't know why. That's their rock bottom, though. When they finally hit rock bottom, it doesn't really matter how they got there, whether it's their fault or not. They had to get to that point in order to deal with that thing in their life that brought them there. You know what I mean?
Before you go on, one of the things you said about us being like very patriotic and so on, and the irony of it is like we're so patriotic, but some of the people that are suffering the most are the people that come back from war and they're missing a limb, or obviously their PTSD, depression, and all that is so bad, and we don't seem to give a shit about them. Yes, there are causes and so on, but everyone's like, oh, we care so much about them, but it's almost like when they come back, we don't have any use for them. It's like, oh yeah, well now they're disabled, so now they're not our heroes because they didn't go in it looking, they didn't come out looking, or they didn't go out the same way they came in.
No, right.
And, and those are people that are suffering, and it, goes back to everything you were just saying. And the inner, obviously the outer disability, if you have a missing a limb, they notice that more, but most of them come back and aren't missing limbs. They come back and they're just damaged otherwise. They're now in a totally different society. They're not allowed to just pull a gun out and shoot some enemy or whatever, even if it's somebody who's trying to get in their house. There's so many different state laws and everything. They can't just act upon the way they would if they were on the battlefield. And so from a person who has both an inner and an outer disability, it's rough because obviously most people recognize my outer disability, but the one that's inside, it's more, it gets considered crazy, or, you're just off or something, weird about you. But it's like, hey, I can't help this one. Honestly, I prefer my outer disability. Like I wish I didn't have if I can choose one or the other, I would take my eye problem. No deal. It's not even close because I hate, this.
I've spent some time. Well, like I said, I grew up in an Army family. My mother joined the Army, which at the time was a really great thing because she joined the Army like in the early 70s, and we were living in Harlan, Kentucky, literally up on the side of a mountain with an outhouse, kind of thing. And I joke with people now, but I think, if my mom didn't get us out of Kentucky, I would be on one of those guys right now on Moonshine, or one of them shows, and I'd be showing you my still up there in the yard,
Right.
But she took us out of there. But, especially when I was homeless, I started noticing I was hypersensitive to the veterans out there. I was in the Army for 3.5 years. I got put out, actually, 6 months before my term was up because I just got to a point where I was coming to work every day, depressed, angry, sad. My first baby was born. I was stressed. I was confused. And at that time, in the 1988, 1989, 1990, the military, they didn't have a stronghold on helping soldiers that had these problems, these emotional issues. We were supposed to come to work composed, proud, and sharp. Uniform, sharp, boots polished. Don't give me none of that. My girlfriend's got a baby kind of thing. Soldier, you got a job to do. Let's go do it. Hut, let's go.
Right.
Well, the whole time we were out there, my mind was back home, And it got to where, I was getting in trouble for having my attitude, which inflamed more of a problem because there was no place for me to go to cope with it. And to be honest with you, so I started noticing other soldiers, young soldiers like myself, that had the same problem. We were confused. It turned into a we thing, and it was more people than you could imagine that had young, adapting skills. We had a problem adapting to this new environment of the military. And so getting out, later on when I was a homeless person, I started really kind of hanging around these guys that I would find out were, out of the military, even if they were not war veterans. A lot of them were kind of experiencing a sort of an emotional trauma in depression, which is a form of PTSD. It's not battle related, but post-traumatic stress is, it's there's an umbrella that can get in there. Look, man, I met this one guy, and he said, you know what, brother? He said, we're out here in society, and everybody's like all upset because we come back from a tour of duty, and we just can't function on the job. He goes, how the hell do you expect me to go into the office and, kind of put on a tie and, be a happy guy at the office? He said, I just came back from some of the worst stuff I've ever seen in my life. And he says, I'm not a trained killer. He said, but I had to go out there and survive, and I had to defend my country, and I had to defend myself. He said, but you know what? He said, I wasn't fighting for the president, and I wasn't fighting for my damn company out there. He says, I was fighting for my wife and kids back home. I was fighting for my grandpa that used to take me fishing. I was fighting for my dad, that taught me how to drive. He said, that's what I was fighting for. He says, the country's got their agenda and the government has their agenda. He says, but what we're fighting for when we go out there as buddies, as brothers in the trenches, we're fighting for our damn families back home. Right. He said, so then we come back home and they expect us to just go get a job because we're out of the military now. He says, I'm sorry, but we just don't know what to do with all the rage we have. And he says, I did what I had to do. He said, but what shames me the most is the things I had to do. He said, it wasn't necessarily the things that I saw that gave me this trauma. He said, I'm ashamed of myself because before I went in the military, I would have never done any of that stuff,
Right.
But he says more veterans come back, and there's just not like you said, there's not a system to catch them when they come back. And it's kind of like we just don't know what to do with them. And the old military mind was, hey, snap it up, soldier. You joined the Army, you joined the military, you knew what you were getting into. Well, kind of I didn't. Right. But other than that, we just didn't know how to adjust back into what psychiatrists and everybody calls normalcy,
Right, but our normalcy is so different, too, because we celebrate you guys going over there and killing and destroying and doing all these things. And again, what you guys do is brave and so on, but if someone did that to us, we would condemn them and say, this is terrible. So, so we're sending you guys on missions to do terrible things to other people, regardless if it's right or wrong, or they're the enemy or we're the enemy. We don't even care. We just look at it like we want to win, you lose. We treat it just like we treat sports. And it's
America
not sport.
Must win.
Yeah, we're talking about people. We're talking about hundreds to thousands of people's lives and their their civilization just being destroyed. We're just going through people's towns and destroying, kids can get killed and, innocent women and elderly can get killed. And it doesn't matter as long as we, complete a mission. And again, there's plenty of good that gets done and so on. But this is a reason why a lot of these guys come back, because now they have to live with the fact that maybe a kid got, destroyed in a drone strike. And it's like, but they got some crazy guy from Al Qaeda. And it's like, yeah, we got this top ISIS guy, but we also killed 6 kids or whatever,
Well, they also see down at the end of their barrels, and I don't really want to get off track here. And
right. I know, we can get off this quick.
But one thing they see while they're looking through their scope is children on the other side with rifles aiming back at them, and they're looking at children that are the same age of their kids back at home playing soccer.
Right.
12, 13, 14, 16 years old, and they're looking across the field at kids who are basically raised up to be military soldiers, But the trauma of dealing with things, especially on Father's Day, one thing I've come to realize, TJ, is shame and disgrace is very real.
Right.
Depression, anxiety, bipolar. I mean, all of these things that we can put a label on. First of all, society must come to a place where we just agree with each other. These are very real.
Right. Well, I think
whether you're a veteran or just a homeless guy, these things are very real.
Right. No, that's why I think it's very parallel, because even though, we don't want to go too off topic with it, but it is a way of how a person can be so messed up from one situation, how you could become you or I, more so you in this situation because you actually served. But, it's just one one obstacle, or it's just one situation of how you could become screwed up and have mental health and have one of these invisible disabilities. But there's so many other ways. But a lot of times, even when we say PTSD, we always refer to soldiers, but there's many forms of PTSD. If you get raped, there's PTSD in that. There's PTSD. I'm sure there's PTSD from just being homeless. There's PTSD from so many different things. So it is applicable because it's just one incident. But
home fires, car accidents, there's boating accidents. I mean, people come out of there wounded emotionally. But here's my testimony, okay? If you wear a wristwatch and you look on the back and it says water resistant to 100 meters, let's say, water cannot get in, right?
Yep.
My heart was so hard and so angry as a young man, 20, 30 years old. I was 37 years old when I was living in a tent out in the woods. My heart was so angry. Light could not come in, and there was no light to give away. I didn't have a good damn thing to say to anyone, okay? My heart was light tight. Light could not get in. Light was not coming out. And I think God knew in his wisdom before I was born what my life was going to be like. And he knew I was going to get to a point where I hated myself. I hated being alive. I kind of hated the world I was in. I was angry at people just for being in my vicinity. He knew that. He put a little flicker of hope in there, and he sealed it up in a little bitty place down in there that I would eventually have to find it on my own because I wouldn't let anybody help me find it. I was resenting. So my testimony is my heart was light tight, but there was a little flicker of light in there. And when I found it, I was able to use that kind of like a little candle in a dark room. And I found my way through those hard times by looking inward instead of waiting for something to come to me from the outside. Dude, I had a rope up in a tree at my campsite, okay? And I didn't put it up there for the reason, but I was actually hanging my backpack off the ground to keep animals out of my backpack because it was attracting animals. The food in my backpack was attracting animals. But anyway, one morning I woke up and I was boiling some water to make coffee, and I saw this rope hanging there, and I didn't have my backpack on it, but had a little like a fist-sized loop tied in the end of it. And I just saw it swaying in the breeze, and kind of like a warm smile came over me, and I said, you know what? Nobody that knows me by name knows where I am right now. All they know is I'm homeless somewhere in Portland, but they don't know where. That became so appealing. I started writing journals and stuff, and I started actually trying to write a book about my homeless experiences. And what I call this is a rope swing. I looked at this rope swinging in the air, and it looked so appealing. It looked like kind of an instant way out, kind of just that would be the end. But what I kept thinking, what my heart was pulling me because I'm a father. This was not on Father's Day, but the Father was in me, and I wanted my children to remember me as a person that was worthy of their respect. I wanted to be respectable in society in some way. The only way I could figure out how to do that was come out of the woods, come out of myself, come out of the anger, come out of hiding, kind of, and face things, walk straight towards it like we used to do in the military. We used to walk straight towards this thing. But I decided to take this challenge for myself to become a respectable person. And what that meant was I had to learn how to deal with the things that I was wounded about, okay? And as a homeless person sitting out on the benches of Portland, Oregon, year after year for Father's Day, I was out there 3 years in a row on Father's Day. And it's so hard. There's a barrier there that's so hard to break through because of our own internal shame and guilt that we feel that we're obligated to have. More people are carrying these guilt and shame feelings that are self-imposed, and because of that, they cannot break through other areas of their life. I'm reminded of some of that now because now I'm a homeowner, by the way. I've come from looking at that rope hanging in the tree as a homeless guy. I decided not to do it. Every night it was the last thing I'd see when I'd zip up my tent and the first thing I'd see when I'd come out. I chose this journey, guys, to get on top of whatever it was. When I started seeing the stars in the skies as a young teenager camping outside, I was fascinated. I was like, man, these things have been out there billions of years. Look how big the moon is. Oh, there's a falling star. I want you to know there's a very different feeling when you're sleeping outside as a homeless person. And you're looking up at the stars and you're looking at the sky and you're going, where are you? You know, dear God. Where are you? Like, you know, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know what's on my heart. You know what I'm feeling. You know what I'm thinking. You know I want out of this. I don't want to be here. You know I'm hanging around these losers down here, and they all got pot and stuff. I don't want to be a part of this. Where's my breakthrough? And you're looking up at the sky, going, "What? Where are you?" You know.
Right, and you're told that he loves everyone equally, and you're sitting here starving and living out in the street, and you don't have a place to stay, and it's like you see all these people going by you with money and happiness and family, and you're just sitting there suffering, and it's just like it's hard not to internalize it and make it, why me? Because you are suffering, and again, it's but it's also it's also hard to come to terms with what you have done, in a wrong sense, because you're so you're at your bottom, you're so low that it's like. What else? And I think that's another
list of things start going through your mind, and you're like, am I here because of that?
Right.
Are you not helping me because I've got to learn something? Like I'm sick of learning these lessons. Like I really need a breakthrough, but.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that, because I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but there's time, like I'm not super religious, but once in a while I'll pray or whatever. And, and there's times where, most of the time I spend most of the prayers I pray for people that I care about, where it's just somebody's going through something. I'll pray for something they go through. And there's times I'll just say, look, if you want to continue to punish me, don't worry about finding me a nice girlfriend or finding, healing my eyes or my mental health. Just take care of them. I'll continue to suffer. That's fine. I'll take it. Just, they can't take it. Just let them have what they need to have in life. And
please bless them. I see them suffering, and please bless them,
Right. And I've done that for pretty much all my friends. I sit there and I just take it and I'll say, it'd be nice if I could have this, but if this is something you're working on for me, just take some more time and work something out for them, and I'll be here, and whatever, we'll deal with it. That's awesome. So I just wanted to do a quick message to my own father. Probably should prepare him before I do this, but so Dad, our relationship's always been a little off, and a lot of stuff I've talked about, a lot of stuff I haven't, our relationship's been very odd, and, certain circumstances, your fault. Some, I can't take too much of a blame because I was a child. But yeah, there's a lot you played a part in, and, I just wanted to say I do forgive you. And, life goes on and things happen, and, as I've said, I know you're getting older and constantly have health issues, and, it plays a part in my feeling of always wanting to know if you're all right, and I'm trying to be a better person and just to know you're okay. And, again, our relationship may never be what you want it to be, but it's something, and I'm trying here because I still do care about you, and I still always have love for you. No, I have not. It's maybe the first time I ever admitted that out loud, but I do. And I haven't neglected it. I do talk to myself. Of course, everyone knows this, but I try not to talk to myself too much about my problems, because you're just going down a rabbit hole. I know, but you have problems with your father too, probably, right? He's a good boy. Anyway, but yeah, whatever happened. Sucks we can't go back in time and try to fix it, and especially grandma. I really wish that didn't happen the way it did, and she died and never got to say goodbye. And of course, everyone in the family kind of just followed your lead and didn't want to intervene, and lost a lot of relationships with a lot of people that are family, and it sucks. But we are where we are. We can't dwell on the past, and so I hope you have a good Father's Day. And like I said, I will always have love for you, and I hope nothing but the best. And maybe at some point we can, meet up and, try something else out, try something new. Anyway, thank you to my father. Thank you to Wayne. Hopefully him and his children figure some sort of middle ground and they can fix their problems. And I really do hope for the best. This was a very powerful episode, and I hope you guys take something from it. Again, happy 1 year anniversary, and I will see you guys in the next episode. All right, guys. See you later.